that I've made. First of all, we're going to assume that you have a general knowledge of football, because without that you'd be lost. And these rules are pretty much the same as the pro rules, and pretty much can be used with the pro game. There's just a few house rules that I've incorporated. And my rules are based on PC version 4.6, is the version of the computer game that I had that I designed all the college teams off of. We're up to version something like 5.5 now, and there has been changes. But like I said, these rules are from observation of how the PC version 4.6 resolved plays, and that's what I will use. I've created about 20 teams, as I mentioned. You might be more familiar with the official pro teams. Those play cards kind of somewhat look like this. This is the 70 Washington Redskins. Now we'll talk about the college teams. This is the 67 Trojans. Slightly different formatting. There's a lot more color. Obviously, if you have a color printer, that would greatly enhance. All the result codes are kind of color coded now. Mostly green is good stuff. Black is usually incomplete. Purple is scrambles. Red is bad things like loss of yardage, fumbles, interceptions. Orange, yellow-orange is penalties. So there's a little bit more information on my cards than the standard pro version. Well, there are some items you're going to need to provide to play the game, and predominantly that's 5 dice. You're going to need a 20-sided die, you're going to need a 12-sided die, you're going to need a 10-sided die, and you're going to need 2 6-sided die. Usually I try to color match my 6-sided die. Like this is for 66 Florida in blue and orange, and here's one in red and yellow for the 67 Trojans. The green background field where you see right defensive end, right defensive tackle, that's on my site. I remade that based on how the PC's resolved plays, and predominantly the change there is the linebacker zones. As you can see, the linebacker zones are not differentiated left and right. They're just one large zone, and that's how the version 4.6 PC game played those zones. Here's another item you're going to need to play the game, the returns table and the result code table. You can get this from my site also. It's been updated, color coded, reorganized. A few typos have been corrected. You'll need this to quickly learn what each result code that you find on the player cards, team sheets of each team, what those codes mean. They're actually pretty easy to figure out, and they're pretty logical. Another item you're going to need, is, if you're playing solo especially, are some simple solo defenses. This is basically the defenses my utility, Excel utility version will use. These are Excel files on my site or request from me. There's about 9 different plays I've created along the lines of the bowl-bound game. Just the standard 4-3 solos defense. Well, this is the 5-2. I'll switch to the 4-3. Some of the college teams play the 5-2. Some of the college teams play the 4-3. Or at least that's how they were designed. And this just depicts where a defensive player would be. Generally, you would use a 12-sided die roll to decide which one of these plays was called, and use a down and distance play calling system, also available on my site, to decipher that also. The left defensive end in this blitzing square And the left defensive tackle in this blitzing square. We'll call them blitzing squares and or down lineman squares. Obviously when the down lineman's there, it's a down lineman. When it's a linebacker or defensive back, it's a blitz. But in essence, the linemen are always blitzing. Okay, let's recap what you'll need to play the 4th Street Software college football game. 5 dice, 20-sided, 12-sided, 1-sided, and 2 6-sided. The result code table with the returns table on it. Some sort of mechanism to show where the ball is and the down is. There's various football games you might have in your possession that you prefer to use for that. The official 4th Street game came with a little marker for that. The team sheets of the actual teams, get those from my site. We'll probably talk a lot about the 67 Trojans as we go through the example. You'll need offensive play cards. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to stick with just the pro set formation. There's usually about 40-something plays in each of those formations. If you're playing head-to-head, you'll need the green background field, defensive field, where the defensive players are set up. You might have noticed I used MiggleToys.com, the old Tudor electric football players, instead of just various tokens on that green field to move around the defensive players. But if you don't have that, you'd use a solo chart to show which each of the 11 defensive players, which defensive zone they would be in. Using those dice, you're going to cross-reference some of those die rolls. The 20-sided die roll, you're going to cross-reference that to the offensive play card, the formation, and whatever play was called, whichever one of the 40 plays was called. And the 10-sided die you're going to use to reference to try and resolve a matchup between an offensive player and a defensive zone. If there's a defensive player in that zone, then there will be a matchup. And the winner of the matchup will have his card on the team sheet referenced for the result code. You'll use the result code table if you haven't quite memorized the codes yet to resolve the play. 12-sided die, if you're playing solo, will give you which defensive play the defense called. Sometimes it's needed for fumbles and weird plays, injuries. And then the 2 6-sided die is actually on the team sheets under the player that won the matchup to get the result code. That concludes the overview, game design, and the of 4th Street College football. The next video will be actual game mechanics. Thanks.